Rick, man, it's great to see you. Thank you for making time today. The title of this show is going to be Connect with the Humanity and Others. So I'll just kick it off with a story, and then I'd love to hear what your feedback is on it or comments on it. So I was part of facilitating a program at Mayo Clinic last week that we've been doing for quite a few years. It's called Tulsi Tea. And it takes the beautiful properties of drinking this tea that is known for, calming you and being soothing, and it has some other physical properties that help the body. And so they came up with making it into like a group talk in which it invites vulnerability. It invites you to share, whatever you're thinking, and we pick a topic and then let people just share without judging it, without telling people how to think or see a situation. So in this particular case, it was dealing with change, and we're experiencing a lot of change like so many other organizations are experiencing and people in their lives. And part of what is happening is Mayo Clinic is growing exponentially. And in the growth, we're bringing on a lot of people. And so for people that have been there a long time, you're not, it seems like you're more into silos. And that the people that used to, cross paths with, you don't cross paths with before they're in another building, they're somewhere else, because it's the nature of growing. And so, but I think that you can keep that connection through culture if you have a strong culture that really values that and encourages everyone to model that behavior of staying connected. In this particular case, one of the people were talking about how that because of the growth that they felt like one person in their department did a really good job of making patients feel valued and feel special. And she did this for every patient who would come through. But since we've grown, they had to be able to scale up that role to where she doesn't do that role alone. Is we have so many patients that it requires everybody to be able to perform this very important act and service for our patients, of making them feel connected and helping them get the care that they come to Mayo Clinic for. So, and people were sharing about how they were, saddened that we were losing that. And I just said that we don't necessarily have to lose it. We can do it, each one of us, by really contributing to the culture. And I told a story. And I said, when I first started at Mayo Clinic, I was volunteering. And I had this idea to interview physicians for a podcast, and the physicians were those who were practicing well-being in their lives. No, not just exercising and things like that, that was included, but because they were taking such great care of themselves, that it really was felt in their behavior, like how they treated other people, how they moved through the day, how they handled stress. Like they were really great models. And I wanted the medical school students to really understand the importance of implementing a well-being practice in their lives now. So as they continue to move through their career, that they are taking care of themselves and also doing a very good job of taking care of other people that they work with and care for. So when I met this physician, it was Brian, Dr. Chong. As I met with him, it was my first time meeting with him. I heard great things about him. And it was in July or August. It was 115 degrees. It was hot outside. He met me in the main building of Mayo at the time, Building 1. And we met in the atrium. And we shook hands. And he said, I'm going to walk down to the staff cafeteria to have a bite to eat to talk. And as we were about to do this, to start walking, I'm about to walk down the hallway inside. He said, can we walk outside?
Hmm.
I'm like, what? Keith 1.0, like, what? It's 115 out there. I had to park like, in another city to get here and walk into the building. Like, why are we walking? This is all the things that are rapid fire in my mind. Like, why are we going to walk outside? Because there's no shade covering outside to
Yeah.
get down to the east part of the hospital. But I said, yes, let's walk outside. So, and his reason was, I've been in the building all day doing procedures. I would love to go outside and be rooted in nature, even if it's a short walk,
Mm,
and which is something that I know resonates with you. And so we walked outside, and as we were walking outside, I let go of my mind about how hot it was and things like that. And I was just really moved by how intentional he was with this time that he had to be rooted in nature and wanted to share it with me. But here's where the culture part comes in, is that we saw a lady who was with who I'm assuming was her significant other. They were older couple, and she was pushing him in a wheelchair to get care in the next building. And he stops, as we're walking, leans over to both of them
mm.
and says, "How are we treating you here at Mayo Clinic today? I hope we're taking great care of you."
Oh man, wow. That
Man,
sounds like Brian.
yeah. And that struck me so much because I see people, I'm with people all the time. They're walking down the hallway, passing people. I've never heard this before. Not to say that doesn't happen. I just never seen it.
Mm,
Rick, that was 7 years ago.
mm,
Every time I get in the elevator with somebody, guess what I do? I say,
mm.
"How are we treating you here today at Mayo Clinic? I hope we're taking good care of you." I mean, this is how culture gets passed on, right? Is that someone does something like this that connects with the humanity of other people. I felt connected to this experience, and this is the ripple effect of it, of me doing it too. And so I think for my colleagues who were worried about us growing, there is a way to grow in a way that continues to connect us with the very best parts of ourselves and fosters that sense of community and caring for one another and touches the humanity in all of us. So I'll just pause there to get your thoughts on this short little podcast.
I love that idea of connecting with other people and doing it in a way where you don't lose a strong culture of respect and mutual support and love. And it's tougher to do in the world at large. I think we all have these little microcosms of connection, with our wives or spouses. And we have our work group and we have our workout group, and we have our families. And we have these little clusters, but we seem to have trouble extrapolating that to a bigger abstract group. And I think that's nowhere more apparent than what happens in politics.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that everybody is trying to figure out, at least the people who have good intentions, which are most of us, are trying to figure out what makes sense for them. And when we stop for a moment, calling names and trying to stereotype the other side and just realize that we're all dealing with the same issues, it's a heck of a lot more productive. And so let me change from politics just to life. That same rule, I think, applies because the connection to our, in my judgment, the connection to our deeper self, my deepest self is connected to you.
Hmm.
And whether I want to admit that or not, if you do admit it, it makes life, I think, more pleasing and more understandable and more rewarding. There isn't much difference between you and I. We all want some sense of security. We want a sense of being respected. We want love to receive it and to give it. We want to make a stand for what we believe in. All those things that you would list as important characteristics for a functioning, fully functioning, high-level human being, those things are shared by most of us. And so if I can, when I look at you, Keith, and think this is a mirror, and what I'm getting back is what I'm putting out. That's a kind of a divine relationship. There's a life force that you and I share, and you and I and everybody in the world shares. And so I guess the comfort that comes from wanting to keep that culture of community comes really from the realization that we're all connected in some way. And if I, maybe 10 years ago, I think I started this meditation where every time I have a conflict, I steady myself. I try to breathe. I don't say the first thing that comes into my mind. I try not to be defensive. And so instead of reacting, I'm just sort of thinking about it. And I've learned to pause when I feel emotions or thoughts come up that are negative about other people, even other drivers, and that's so easy to do because you don't see their faces, you just see their cars, and it's easy to be impersonal and hateful. But I practice this idea that when I feel a negative reaction toward another person, I want to respond calmly. So I learn to pause, feel the emotion, and then later, after this thing has passed, I think about why did that upset me? And usually it's because they didn't respect me, or they didn't recognize my importance, or they didn't do something that my ego wanted them to do. So getting back to the main point of this idea of community and helping and how did we treat you at Mayo's? If we start with the meditation I've started to say I do, I think it's helpful. And the one that I started 10 years ago was the notion, um, I have no malice toward anyone, no malice toward anyone. So therefore, there's nothing for me to prove. There's nothing for me to criticize. My goal is to recognize what is in them that's in me and build on that.
Yeah, love it, Rick. Love it. Yeah, I think that's definitely what Brian showed me that day, and I just thought it was beautiful, and
Mm.
and
Yeah,
uh, and it's right aligned with what you shared, Rick. Thank you so much for today. I love you.
I love you, Keith. Thanks for this. I always learn stuff when I listen to you, and I love that story with Brian. It's a wonderful story,
Yeah, thank you.
and you do it too. I mean, now you've now you've done it
Yeah.
to 10 every day.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
you're welcome.